Okay, hello everybody. I'm Lee Goldstein, the Trading Director at 10 Minute Trades. I want to say hello and I want to welcome everybody to the JOBB version 10, our onboarding class. So thanks for coming and I'm very excited about getting started. Okay, so what is an onboarding class? An onboarding class it's a startup, okay? It's not a quick start. A lot of you have been to quick starts already. Quick starts have been very, not advanced, but very significant training. And we're doing things a little bit differently this year or this release. So we're having this onboarding class, which will just go over how do you just get started. And then we're going to do continual training. We're going to have 4 specific training sessions that we do in the trade room with live real trading, because there's no better way to learn than by doing live training while you're actually trading. That's the best way to do things. You can practice, you don't have to trade real money, and there's no question that's the best way to get started. So onboarding is, I just want to go over all of the things that are in the software so you know what to expect, what to look for. And I want to go over a little bit about Ninja. Not everybody has an account yet, probably, I would guess. So I want to start a little bit from the beginning. So it might be, if you already have an account, don't get bored. I'm going to cover a little bit of Ninja first, just for folks that don't know what they have to do before you even get started with us. And so that's really the definition of onboarding. So first thing you really want to do is go over to ninjatrader.com and you want to deal with their brokerage. If you do not have a brokerage account currently, then you have to set up a brokerage account and you need data in order to trade futures. So if you don't have an account, NinjaTrader is the broker that you use. They don't let you use other brokers if you're a new brokerage customer. If you had a brokerage account with an authorized NinjaTrader broker like AMP, and you had an old NinjaTrader account, you can get grandfathered in. So that's why you'll see some people that might have AMP as their broker, and you're wondering, you might be scratching your head, well, how come I had to use NinjaTrader as the brokerage? Now, I will say this, overall, I've been very happy with NinjaTrader as my broker. One of my accounts and one of our company accounts is with them, and they've been fine. They're usually very good about tech support, and they've been very good about brokerage support. And it's very simple to reach them. Just head to their website, www.ninjatrader.com. Now, there are a couple of things you can do and that you should know before you get started with us. So a lot of people say, hey, I have the free version of NinjaTrader and nothing works. Right, you're right, nothing works. The free version of NinjaTrader doesn't work with third-party software. So it's not us alone, but if you're a member of another trade room and they have NinjaTrader software, you can't use the free version. It's not really their most advanced version of the platform. So you really need to subscribe to the NinjaTrader platform. And they, just like everything else in this world, they have subscriptions. They also have a lifetime option, and it's reasonable. It's not outrageously priced. I think it's very fair for what you get. You get the ability to learn how to make money if you get very serious about this. So you can subscribe to their platform quarterly, annually, lifetime. So you'll see the prices again on their website. And the other important thing that you need is data. People always forget. Years ago, they used to call it the CME bundle. We used to go and call them up and say, okay, just sell me the CME bundle. And they've changed it slightly. And when you talk to them on the phone, if you just explain to them that you're looking for what the equivalent data package you need today that is exactly like the CME bundle. And it's essentially you're looking for the data package that lets you trade the micro futures, micro gold, micro NQ and ES, the currency futures like the Australian dollar and the British pound, and also the full-sized futures. But you don't need Forex data, you don't need stock data. You're just looking for futures data, and it's not complicated. You just call them up and they'll tell you what the prices are. It's reasonable, and you buy the data, and usually the data is on a monthly basis. Now, the other question about data is there's two major companies that do the type of data that we use. There's more than two, but for our purposes today, you've got Rhythmic and CQG, and they're, in the old days, they used to be completely interchangeable. Rhythmic had some data that CQG didn't have available. For instance, if you're in Germany and you want to trade the DAX, then you had the ability to get the DAX data from Rhythmic. CQG did not have the DAX data. We have virtually no DAX trades at the moment, so CQG has been totally acceptable for me. I used to use Rhythmic as well, and I never had problems with Rhythmic. It's the kind of thing, if you have friends that are trading, you can ask them what they've been using and what their experiences were. If you come into the trade room, you could certainly type a message into the chat. People will certainly tell you what their feelings are about the data. We are currently using CQG. I know plenty of people that are using Rhythmic also. So they are pretty interchangeable. I would check on some connectivity questions that we heard about Rhythmic, but I think that's more for funded accounts as opposed to the type of trading we're doing. But don't forget, so you need data and you need futures data. The other thing is if you don't have a brokerage account at all, NinjaTrader has a 2-week free demo. You go to their website, www.ninjatrader.com, and you'll see a free demo. It lasts for 2 weeks. You can do it all online, and it's a great way it has live data, which is great. So in other words, it's not simulated data or last week's data. It's current live data, and it lasts for 2 weeks. And sometimes you can call them and ask them if they'll expand it for more than 2 weeks. Usually they're pretty flexible, but it's definitely worth doing, especially if you've never traded before. It's great to start. Why go out and spend money the first day when you're not sure what you're doing, when you can get a free demo of the platform and get a feel for it for 2 weeks. So that's not a bad way to start either. And then there's a totally outside the box alternative, but you have to be careful with this method. There's a way of trading where it's called, dealing with a funded trading account. You hear people say all the time, well, I'm a funded trader. I don't put up any of my own money. I'm trading other people's money. And, it sounds fantastic. It's not quite as simple as it sounds, but if you had no money and you wanted to trade and you wanted to learn to trade, and if you're not an experienced trader, doing the funded account method can be tricky because they will let you, you buy a funded account essentially, or you're subscribing, and it might be that this month the price is $90 or $89 to open a funded account, and they give you data and they let you use the NinjaTrader platform, and it's $89. But what they don't really, you don't always understand that the way that it works is if you don't trade well enough to stay alive and you don't blow up the account, if you blow up the account, they charge you for a reset. In other words, to restart the account again. So yes, it's an interesting way for someone who has no money to try and learn how to trade, and then even maybe at some point become a funded trader where you're actually trading other people's money, that's a whole other thing we'll talk about down the road. But the thing to realize about this whole funded account method, and one of the popular companies, a company called Apex Trading, APEX, is they make their money by you goofing up and having to reset your account. That's one of the best ways that they make their money. So it's a little bit tricky for a brand new trader not to have to reset the account. But the attraction is it doesn't cost you more than that $80 or $90 to set up the account. So just know that it's an option that's out there. If you have no money and you're just absolutely dying to learn about trading, you know, you can do the free demo, of course, but ultimately free demos are going to run out, so you need some alternatives. The other alternative to understand is trading micros. They're new futures contracts that require much less money in a trading account in order to trade them. And quite a few of our trades can use micros. So you can trade along with us if you can't afford to trade their big brother and sister full-size contracts. So micros, you know, you could have a futures account with $2,000 in it, or $2,500, say, and you could trade micros and learn and make money. It's possible. So there are quite a few different options that you can get started with and that you could use to learn this whole procedure and business so that you could trade. Keep in mind always that you want to do your homework and practice and study and realize that, this is now your new business. So it's not magic. There's not one magic indicator or one magic piece of information that's going to make you instantly profitable. You must put in the time and learn, just like you have to learn about what data to buy, what platform you really love. You absolutely just want to put the time in to do this right. Okay, so getting started, just to recap real quickly, you need a brokerage account, you need data. You can get a free demo to start. You could look into a funded trading account at some point, and that's the beginning. So once you're past that point and you have a brokerage account, now we're going to cover a little bit more of the onboarding. So you've got your brokerage account, you're really excited. And just as a reminder, you've downloaded, let me show you, let me start from scratch. Okay, so we're going to download the software. And I'm not so concerned with how my slideshow looks today. So bear with me because I'm going to open it and close it as I need to. Like I said, because it's more, I want to show you what to do. So let's say that you are a current member. If you're a current member, you should uninstall your software. Go to Tools, go to Remove Ninja Script Assembly, click on it, and then you can click both of them together and remove them. Okay, these are the old versions, and then it's going to ask you, do you wish to continue to remove them? Of course, you're going to say yes, wait a few seconds, and you're going to remove them. Okay, successfully removed. Bingo. So now the key is you're going to go to our website, and I'm going to do all this stuff just so everybody knows exactly what to do. I know it's a lot of repeat for some of you, so hang in there. I'm not going to do it for 10 years. But go to our website, www.10minutetrades.com/login, and you're going to see a screen. You know what it looks like. It's going to look like, not that, it's going to look like this. You're going to log in, okay? Everybody knows my email address. Try to steal my account. It's okay. No one's going to do it. And you get in there, right? And it's going to look somewhat like this. You won't see quite as many tabs because I'm the administrator, so I get all the tabs, but you should see the trade room and market movers. But go to the software tab, click on download job V8 for NinjaTrader, scroll down a little bit. Okay, and you've got the trap trade. You're going to download that, and you're going to download job for NT8. Okay, so you click on one. Let's start with JOBB NT8. It's a Google Drive file. To download it, you just click on this right arrow. You don't even have to wait for the files to come up. Click the right arrow. You should get a message in the right corner right over there. The file gets downloaded. Okay, you can close that tab and you can do it again, okay, and download the trap trade. Click on it again the same exact way. It's a Google Drive file, and then click on that download arrow. And now you have both of our files. You can close this out. You can exit the website for now. There is a video on how to install a strategy into NT8. And in fact, there are quick start videos. If you click quick start, you can watch all of these educational videos about the software, and some of them are old, but it still applies. A lot of the data applies. Okay, and there's lots of resources on the website you can go through. But once you download the software for us today, most people, their software downloads into their download folder, okay? You need to know obviously where your downloaded files go on your computer. So after your files are downloaded, you're gonna go to Tools, Import. You're not gonna unzip the files, you're gonna import them. Import NinjaScript add-on. So it's gonna find that first file, okay? This is the trap trade I just downloaded. And then I double click on it. It's gonna give you this third-party warning message, just okay it. And you can turn that off forever if you just uncheck it, if you check it there. And it's gonna, whoops, it's gonna download the software, and it should give me a message, successfully imported, so the trap trade is there. Then I'm gonna go back to Tools, Import NinjaScript add-on. It's gonna find, I have to find the file, the NT8, the breakout. I'm gonna import that. Same third-party message, I'm gonna okay that. And now I get that success message. And both my strategies are imported. You must reboot your NinjaTrader after you import strategies, okay? That comes straight from my programmer. It's absolutely advised to reboot. So I shut down my Ninja and I reboot. Now, after you download, and if you have, you have a valid NinjaTrader account, I'm not going to show you what's in my help file because I don't really want to show you my license key. But if you click on the help file, what you will find in there is your NinjaTrader machine ID, okay? The NinjaTrader machine ID gets emailed to us, and it gets emailed to support. Let me show you. Let me bring up quickly our little slideshow. It might make it easier. Give me 1 second. And what you want to do is if you email to us your machine ID, give us 24 hours to authorize it. And what that does, it just allows the software to work on up to 2 computers. Okay, you can send us 2 separate machine IDs, and that's exactly what that's going to do. Okay, so let me show you the slide just so you have it and you can keep a record of it. All right, we've covered all that. Send your machine ID, help@10minutetrades.com. You don't have to spend the time creating a ticket. It's not necessary. So you don't have to create this big customer tech support account, which really isn't a big deal, but you don't have to do it. Don't send a picture, please. Please don't send a picture of the machine ID. Cut and paste it as text, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to send your email back. I want it as text. That removes all possible errors. Okay, and then just remember, what is our software? Okay, our software, it's an add-on to NinjaTrader. So importing it the way that we've just discussed, importing it makes it literally a part of NinjaTrader. So it's integrated into the software, and we call it all these wonderful things. It's the great equalizer. We love it. It helps you compete with the faster traders out there. It's a semi-automated strategy and indicator for NinjaTrader. We still do have version 7 but it's not an updated version. It's probably two versions behind the current version. Now, keep in mind, NinjaTrader themselves is not doing development on NinjaTrader 7 anymore. So it makes no sense to keep developing new versions for that, which isn't being developed. You could still absolutely run what we do, many of the things we do, not everything, but many. Certainly all the breakout trades and earnings trades will work in NinjaTrader 7. And then the big thing that I like to tell people is our software is a super ATM. And I'll get into that a little bit. So what do I mean by that? So instead of having to tell NinjaTrader by using their internal, it's like not really as complicated as a programming language, but they have a syntax for having to tell the platform how a trade should behave, where your stops should be, and whether or not your stops can move, and how many contracts and entry times, things like that. That's what an ATM does. It's an automated trade management add-on to most good platforms. Most good platforms have it. Our software is an automated trade management system that's, besides being very specific for what we do normally, you know, trading the news, which is how we got started doing this, it's also now a complete ATM system. It has movement of stops, trailing of stops. Most of you know very well all the things that it does, but what I wanted to do as our onboarding is go through all the inputs in the software today. I thought that that would make the most sense of everything that we do. And then I will take you know, any questions that anybody has. Getting into, just so you know what's coming, what we're going to do starting Monday with the training is we're going to go over, I'm going to supply a template for each trade room to help save time for you. And also, you know, we'll go over the various trade types and, you know, much more, obviously, much more specifically what everything does. But today, what I want, you know, setting up, if you want your charts to look exactly like mine, we'll do that as well. I will say this, there is a video on the member website that you can watch that shows you how to set up your charts if you want them to look just like mine do. One thing about my charts is I try to keep them as free of extra stuff as possible. You know, I don't have a million indicators. And in fact, I don't even have EMAs on my main trading chart. I have them on one chart, but I don't need them. And if you think about it, you've all been watching us, a lot of you have been watching us already. Certainly on news trades, it's just not so important to do deep dive analysis. We talk about this in all our webinars. Our analysis is, what did the report do last month? What did it do the month before? And you know, today's University of Michigan trade was the perfect example of why you don't have to be an Elliott Wave or a Ichimoku Cloud subscriber, because we looked at the report. It had 6 months winning in a row, and you just trade the report, and it doesn't really matter where the high of the day was or the Elliott Waves were. It's not a factor in many of the type of trades that we do. Now, yes, of course, sometimes levels come into play and direction. Yes, it does. But ultimately, I think you all have seen so many times now how this all is not dependent as much as other companies look at levels and previous highs and lows. You know, most of the main trading that we do doesn't care about that stuff. And even the way we trade the gold and the oil open, it's not so important, those levels and those types of indicators as well. And that's one of the main things that made me fall in love with this type of trading. I don't feel like doing 800 hours of analysis before I take a trade. And I used to, and what I did is I overanalyzed myself out of every trade. I never traded. So anyway, let's go through the software, the inputs, and I'll answer any questions. So first thing is you've downloaded your software, you didn't get any errors, and what do you do? Where's the strategy? Where's the software? So right click the chart, and then you'll see strategies. And then on the left, you have the JOBB V10 and Trap Trade version 4. So why don't we do the Trap Trade first, because it's short. So you double click it and it shows up under configured, and then we call all these are the inputs, okay? The inputs are, instead of having to write an ATM, an automated management system, you just have to answer the questions and know how to answer them. And we don't even have to answer all of them. Bracket center is a default. It stays at price at the time. Average price bars is a default. And then our first question is position size. How many contracts do you want to trade for position 1? You could trade 1, you could trade 10, okay? And then you have 2 positions also in a trap trade. Wait for spike. Something used to happen in a trap trade years ago. It could still happen, but wait for spike is an emergency. It puts a stop on the chart immediately. When our first version of the trap trade was released, the stop wasn't put on the chart until after the trade started taking place. In other words, your stop, you would be trading naked for a few seconds until you got filled. So what we did is we changed it. We wanted to have an emergency stop on the chart, and it's there until the trade you get filled, and then it moves into your proper stop. Stop loss position, it's just always on last fill price. In the old days, we used to trade differently than we do now, but the last fill price is default, and we've never used an average for a stop. It's always the last fill price, and that's a default. And then the number of ticks for your stop, that's an option, whatever the report calls for, or if you've designed your own trap trade, that's straight ahead, you just have a stop in ticks. If you want to cancel a trade, and here's a little bit of information about using the cancel feature. If you notice on most of our daily reports, there is a cancellation rule, and I rarely pay attention to it these days. And the reason for that is, especially since this world crisis, health crisis began, we discovered that news trades are not to be canceled so quickly. Sometimes the data release is delayed, but it doesn't make you any more risky to wait. So I'm a little bit more flexible about the length of my cancellations. In other words, if natural gas doesn't fill in 10 seconds, I might be willing to wait 15. Natural gas is probably the worst example because natural gas almost always fills on time. But if you take a trade, but take today's trade, that's a much more reasonable. University of Michigan's a good example. You could have a situation where your orders are sitting on the chart and it doesn't fill you right away. So it has a 20-second cancel if you're not filled rule. But don't forget, if you use the cancellation rule, don't forget that the activation, if it's 1 second before the news, which is at 10 o'clock, right? 9:59 is your activation. So you have to add that 1 second to the cancel rule. So if you want to use the DMM exactly, you would actually put 21 seconds in the cancel so that you make up for the 1 second early that we're putting our orders on the chart. So it's actually 21 seconds. So if you have in the trap trade, what we'll often do is we use the activation time preparation seconds. That means how many seconds before the news is released do we put our orders on the chart. So if that's 5 seconds, don't forget to add 5 seconds to your cancellation. Otherwise, you'll cancel before the event takes place. You'll cancel too soon. If you have a 10 o'clock event and you cancel it at 10 o'clock, but you forget about the 5 seconds extra that we are putting our orders on the chart, bingo, you'll cancel 5 seconds before the news comes out. So just don't forget that that's the way that input is being read by the software. And then account warnings are monetary warnings. If you're trading live and you're asleep and you forget, if you have your account warnings enabled, when you want to trade live, it'll just give you a warning that you have to say yes. So we just wanted to do that for very, very new people that forget that there is a difference between trading live and trading in simulation or in playback mode. So you can just uncheck the warnings on and off, very simple. The input series, that's always going to automatically choose what your chart is. So obviously, if you're trading NQ, every now and then, I've had an instance where the correct input didn't get pulled into the data. It's not because of the software, but it might have been because of something I was doing with a chart. I remember years ago, I had a jobs report. It was a great trade, and for some reason, my input was wrong, and I missed the trade. And I'll never forget that. It was the one time it ever happened. It's very rare, but it's something you want to check if you're trading live money, of course. Check every input. The other input is the account. When you're trading sim, you trade with the account on sim. And also, if you're trading sim, the charts are in sim. If you're because otherwise, if you're trading in sim and your account is set to live, you won't see the orders because they're going to a live chart. So just like if you go over to a live account to trade, the orders won't show up on the sim chart. You have to move your chart to sim, okay? Or to live. If you're live, put your charts on live. If you're sim, put your charts on sim, okay? Not complicated. Right-click the chart to load and to work on the strategy. You know, you can always take the strategy off. You can always open and close this chart, it's no problem. So we went through all these things. You have your account. We calculate on each tick during the trade. That's a default, okay? You can experiment with these. Everybody has different methods of doing things. There's no 100% right or wrong on many of the things that we do. So keep that in mind, that there's no 100% right or wrong on everything. You know, obviously some things, yes, if the trade's not turned on, it's not going to work. So there's a right or wrong for that, okay? Labels, you know, in the trade room, I'm big on labels. I love to label my trades. So, you know, if I'm trading University of Michigan as a gold breakout, I like to identify what I'm doing, and I like to show the instrument, because when I apply it down at the bottom, after I'm done with all the inputs, you go down to the bottom, apply it, okay it, and it shows up in the control panel in NinjaTrader, all right? And under the strategy here, the name I put in the label shows up, and that's especially useful because sometimes I'll trade multiple setups, multiple trades, and I don't want to not be able to know which trade is on, which trade is off. Maybe I want to remove one, okay? Right click and I can remove the strategy. So it's important, to me, it's important to put labels on. It just makes things clearer, and everything you can do to make errors less possible, you want to do. So that's why I use the labels all the time. Maximum bars is a default. Almost everything else is a default except enabled. Now this is important. You can enable a trade from inside the software, right? Apply and okay it, and it's enabled. I don't like to do that. Now it's my warnings are on, remember? Live money, yes, okay, but I'm not gonna say that. I don't wanna be live, okay? I'm in sim. I don't wanna trade to fill by accident, okay? So I'm gonna disable it by unchecking the box, go back to my strategy. I don't wanna be on live while I'm showing you things, okay? So I'm on sim. And what I was going to say is I was showing you that the breakout shows up on there. So it's important to make sure that if you enable, what I was going to say is this, if you use the enable inside the software. The reason I don't like to do it is, what if it's just a few seconds of where you're blind to what the chart is? Because while you're clicking enabled and apply and yes, see how boom, I got filled? If I was live and not ready, I didn't have the opportunity to turn that trade on using the button in the control panel. It's much safer to do it in the control panel so you don't have an uncontrolled trade that you weren't planning on. So in the old days, that button was very important. You know, it was 6 years ago that that button first was designed. Some people, they like doing it that way. I think it's much safer. Don't enable it inside the software. Always do it in the control panel. And then all of the rest of these are defaults, okay? Defaults. So you don't have to do, you know, exit on session close. That makes sense. You know, exit your trade. If you want a trade to be held over, you could do exit, turn it off, okay? It's pretty simple. The trap trade, there's not a lot of inputs. And then of course, when you're done, you have all your inputs set, you apply it and okay it. Then when you're ready to trade, then you can enable it. Why ever take the chance that you made a mistake, you're accidentally in live, right? And your trade, you know, why is my trade taking place anyway? Because if you're a newbie, you might not understand why my trade's taking place. It's because the time of the event was 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock has already passed, okay? So the software thinks that the time for the event has taken place. I better get those orders on the chart. If you put yourself in for a live trade, you know, you just lost $200 because you made a mistake. It could happen. Don't let it happen. Never use the enabled button inside the software. That's the trap trade inputs. Does anybody have any questions about the trap trade? Any questions? There is a video on the member website where you go for downloading the software. It is Trap Trade version 2, but it's an excellent video to watch because so many of the concepts can still be used in the current Trap Trade version. So I highly recommend watching, even though it's Trap Trade 2. It's very useful. And there's a really cool feature in the Trap Trade called adjust. When a trap trade is on the chart, let me change the time of this. So you've got this adjust button. When your orders go on the chart, and you'll watch this in the video, it helps to get a better fill. So you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, how come you guys don't use that very much these days? It's because the markets are so volatile. In the old days when the trap trade was invented, the markets, they weren't quite this crazy most of the time. You had time. We used to put our trap trade orders on 45 seconds, up to 45 seconds before the event. And you would adjust your orders around support and resistance because it helped get better fills. Now, because the markets are so volatile, you just want to get your orders set, and we do our research now based on shorter time periods, you know, that we're preparing for a trade. So that's the trap trade. I don't see any questions, no trap trade questions. You know, it's the kind of thing also, you may have more questions once you start using it. How do you remove a strategy that you don't need from the control panel? Just right click it, click remove, and it's gone. And your orders still show up if you had a trade. One thing I find useful, if you don't want orders showing up, 2 ways you can get rid of them. Right click the chart and then go to data series. Scroll down, plot executions, text and marker. You set that to do not plot, your orders won't show up, okay? So that's one way to get rid of them. But, you know, more often than not, we want the orders on the chart. It's also easy to go to accounts, reset your replay, put your mouse on the replay money, left click, then right click, edit account, reset, clear history is checked, and just yes it. And now my account is reset back to 0 and my orders are gone. I can just start doing market playback, or, you know, if I'm demonstrating like we are now, it cleans things up, okay? You don't need the old version of the trap trade, Lewis, or the current version does everything the old version does, plus more. So you don't have to have the old version. Will I be sharing my strategy templates? I will be sharing strategy templates, Andrew, definitely. Yep, starting Monday, there'll be templates. What I'm gonna probably do is just post them for that trade room. They'll be posted in the room drive, okay, of the trade room. So that's the trap trade. I love the trap trade. You notice that we're using it a lot more these days. This morning's retail trade was interesting. You know, it wasn't a guaranteed big winner on the trap. It was better as a breakout, but there was a potential for profit on the trap trade this morning. Let's talk about the breakout. So again, right click the chart, left click strategies, double click JOBB V10. And as long as it shows up under configured, you're ready to go. Other thing to think about, just safety. You know, a lot of times you'll see me, my charts are live, right? Like maybe a trade just ended. Now, if your input screen is open, there's some things that you just can't do. You have to close the input screen. Like for instance, I can't change my charts from live to sim. But if my charts are on live, right, and I open the strategy inputs, just one thing you want to be careful about. It's, you know, it's common sense, but it's just something you want to be careful about. You know, when you're messing around with your inputs, if your charts are live, you know, if you slip, you could sell the market, right? So if your charts are live, just be really careful about what you're doing on screen, all right? It's a good idea to keep your charts on sim most of the time until you're ready to trade. So right click, strategies, I double clicked. Let's go through the inputs. So, or what I do, cover the trade panel with your input screen. So we were trying, but didn't quite get to it in this version. One of the things we're going to do, it'll probably definitely be the next version. Probably definitely, yes, that's very definite. But when you choose a trade type, like breakout trade, we don't want to show all the inputs. You don't need them. So that'll really simplify things also. That'll be really nice. So first input that's important is the trade type. What kind of trade are we trading? How do you know what kind of trade you're trading? So sometimes you're not going to know. Sometimes the only way you're going to know there's a trade is by coming into the trade room, because we have what I call trade room events, and then we have our regular DNA type trades. A lot of people subscribe and become members, and they never come into the trade room. They just get our reports and they trade on their own. That is a complete methodology, okay? And you don't, and all of the other things we do they're sort of extras. I mean, they've become so ingrained into what we do that we don't consider them extras anymore. You know, like earnings, the earnings setups, and now the opens. You know, the opens have become a very important part of what we're doing. You know, trades that aren't associated with a daily report, those often are trade room events. So to me, the most important thing, if you're going to be involved with us, the best way, definitely be a trade room member, because you see it all the time. The markets require changes in setups, and there's a million extra things to do if you're a trade room member. And you know, I go off on that tangent because when I think about the types of trades we choose now, are varied and quite substantial. from when we first started. When we first started, you had a breakout and you had a trap, and that was it. There was no other trade. There was no one-click range. There was no colored zone trade, nothing. We've added all this stuff. So our DNA is the breakout trade. You know, you put a bracket above and below the current price. That's our DNA, the breakout trade. But in order to choose the trade types, you just go through them. Breakout, the typical range trade or traditional range trade with colored zone, one-click range, one-click with colored zones, reversal trades, the squeeze play, the trap squeeze, which is a new squeeze play. The trap squeeze is, you know how we're using the squeeze play, but you use the range in it. So the trap squeeze now, you use the range, but instead of buying at the top of the range, you're selling. So it's like a reverse squeeze in a sense. It's very interesting. We'll get into it. And then we have market open trade. That's what we do in the morning. You'll see our earnings trades starting next week. And then off. So why might it be off? Because we're in beta now of our magnet trade, okay? The magnet trade, haven't been doing a lot with it lately, just because we've got so many other things going on, but there's this really cool feature in the software called the magnet trade, and we'll have a little webinar on that or a training session coming up this week. So we'll start talking about the magnet trade. I mention it all the time, but you know, I always say, oh, there's the NQ getting ready for a magnet trade, or there's gold, it's going to do a magnet trade. You know, very simply, a magnet trade, the simplest explanation is a support level. For me right now, it's highs and lows, and it's the instrument being pulled into the high or the low. We have a setup that you can click and it'll automatically create a magnet trade. So it's an interesting, and it's, when I say it's beta, we already have about 10 new ideas to make it better. So it's something we're going to keep working on. It's beta, but it works. But keep in mind, it's a powerful, it's almost a separate strategy, is what the programmer said. So we'll be doing a lot with that in the near future as well. So you have the various different types of trades. How do you know what they are? Most of the time, obviously, it'll be discussed. It'll show up on the daily reports. You know, obviously we're trying to make sure it's clear on the daily reports, and you can, as you get experience, you'll know just by looking at the yellow line what the trade is. You know, it used to be that most of our trades were bracket trades. Most of our news trades are probably bracket trades, although they're getting a run from range trades now also. And it's quite clear on the daily report which trade type you're going to use. You know, if you look at the other day, we had CPI. Okay, so this is not complicated. If you just look at your daily report, Canada rate statement, core CPI, it's a range trade, and we're obvious about it. Okay, we're going to tell you, hopefully all the time. And then there are alternatives sometimes to the trades, but you'll know which trade type to use. Certainly if you're in the trade room, you're always going to know, because we're going to talk about it. Activate entry and the range end. This is very simply, what time are we entering? What time are we not entering, but what time are we putting our orders on the chart? Okay, so we could use this morning's trade. We could use the DMM to help us. So if we were doing a range trade, the DMM has a range start time. What time does the range start? And the DMM has a range end time. That's the time you put in this little spot. Also, if you have a bracket trade, breakout trade, you have an activation time, okay? That's why it says activate. If there's two X's, that means, you know, if it's a 10 o'clock event, it's going to be the hour before that, right? Because we're usually putting our trades, our orders on the charts a few seconds or a second before the event. So it's not going to be, if it's a 10 o'clock event Eastern time, our activation time, if you're in the Eastern time zone, is going to be 9:50, 9:59. Okay. So, and that's the format is there. So just follow the format as it is. Okay. The bracket, simply type in what the bracket is. How many contracts do you want to trade? Our breakout trades, all of our trade types except the trap have up to 3 positions, and you can trade multiple contracts. How many contracts within the position? Within the 3 positions, you could trade 1 contract on target 1, 3 on target 2. We do that. I do that all the time. Trade 2 contracts on target 2. If you have a trade you think is going to really work out well, that you're really confident in, why not load your contracts where you have a better profit? I love in a 3-position trade to add a contract in the middle. That way, if it works 3/4 of the way, you get those extra profits, even if it changes direction. So you've got 3 potential positions. You've got targets for each position. Do you want a 5-tick target for position 1, position 2, position 3? All that stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Then there's this featured target 1 stop move. Now, very important, if you have no idea what these things mean at all, you can hover your mouse over the input and it shows you. Okay. If it doesn't show you, it's just because the time expired. So just go back to a different one, hover over that, and then go back to another one. Okay. So that's a great aid. It's a great aid. What's target 1 stop move? So if your target 1 gets hit, you can move your stop automatically. All right. And we'll get into the formatting and all that stuff in training. This is just to go over the inputs today. And then stop loss ticks, same as trap trade. If you have a 3-position trade, you could move target stop again after target 2 gets hit. It's a nice little feature. And then there's trailing, and there's 2 types of trailing. And trailing can start at target 1 getting hit or target 2 getting hit, or you could just turn it on. And you can control the number of ticks you trail when the trailing starts. You want to trail 3 ticks at a time. You can trail 3 ticks at a time. Okay, so there's 2 methods of trailing. Francis, I'm expecting you to test the method you wanted and let me know that it works the way you wanted it to. Excuse me. Then we have the same cancel, right? Cancel after X seconds. Just turning off my trailing. Cancel after X seconds, same rule. So here, 1 second before the event, it's a 20-second cancel rule. So you make it a 21-second cancel if you want to cancel exactly at the time of the event taking place. Exactly, not at the time of the event, if you want to use our exact cancel rule. But remember what I said about automated canceling. In these markets, over the past year and a half, news has been more delayed than we've ever seen it. It used to always be faster. I hate to use the word always. It used to often be faster, where the news results would make the instrument that you're trading respond much more quickly. But we see a lot of news moves that are clearly quote unquote news moves that sometimes happen 10 or 15 seconds after the release. And it's really world crisis related. That hardly ever used to happen until we got the world started along this path that we're still in right now. Okay. Move stop to break even if market moves X ticks. So, and break even delay. These 3 can work together, or these 2 can work by themselves also. These used to be called break-even trigger ticks, break-even profit ticks. Nobody knew what that meant. So if the market moves 8 ticks, If the market moves X ticks, move my stop to break even. That's what that does. Real simple. If after that move, if the market, you can move your stop to break even +3, +8. This just moves it to break even. This can move it to break even plus or minus. This delays that movement if for some reason you want to delay it. Why might you want to delay that? Think about the jobs report. What if you're trading the type of trade that you don't want to move your stop as the initial move is taking place? You might want to wait a few seconds for the volatility to pass. That's why we had that third item, okay? And that's after the trade entry. Understand that. These are moves after the trade entry. And we'll get into these. These, to me, are two of my favorite features in the software. And I'll get into those when we have our specific training about them. I really love that feature. And then we get down to some range trade info. You've got the range start time. You know, if you just look at, so simple, just look at a daily report that uses a range trade, and we're just doing it differently, okay? It's not a same as an activation. You have a range start time. So it's 8:29:59. So that's what goes in there. And then you have an activate entry that goes up there, range end time, okay? Ticks above the range, ticks below the range. That's just an item that's called for in a range trade. And it's just like what it sounds. You create a range and you have to go that many ticks above or below the range for you to be entered into the market. How do we get those numbers? By studying the move. It's research. Show the range graphics on chart. I don't think it can be any clearer than that. Draw the range, okay? In this color, show the range color. How thick do you want the lines? Then the other very important, number of bars for the range. That used to be what, one click bar look back? I mean, who in their right mind would name something one click bar look back except a programmer? So we changed the name, number of bars for the range, okay? How many candles do you want in the range? You want 3. So use 3 candles to create a range. The zone period is just a specialized period for using the colored zone trade, all right? Show the zone area. And the zone area color is going to be that, okay? Unattended mode, something we don't use in the trade room much, but if you want to trade Tuesday, you know you're not going to be in your office. You can use unattended mode. Just be careful if you're not going to actually be near your computer. Things can, what if you lose internet, et cetera, you know the deal. But you can put the date in of the trade, how long you want the trade to last. You could actually put a percentage you would allow the account to lose, heaven forbid. And then you just set up the trade normally using the inputs, and it will trade on that date. Right now you can do it one time, and that's an update we're going to do where we'll be able to set up multiple unattended trades. You know, we haven't really done it. We're not pushing unattended trading because it adds risk. It adds risk. You want to be careful, okay? It's a nice feature. You know, if you're in a meeting and you're in the same office, you can check on your computer. It's great. And then we have the modes. Years ago, and some people probably still do this, you can use an ATM strategy instead of using our software as an ATM. So normally we use strategy internal is pretty much a default, but you could use an ATM strategy if you wanted to, okay? Auto disable after trade. Auto disable, if I'm a New Yorker, auto disable after trade. Very important feature. If a trade finishes, normally the trade is disabled. The whole concept with auto disable after trade is it doesn't automatically disable it so you could keep trading. So especially we got into that with earnings trades, really became important where you could just, if you goof, um, and make a mistake and enter at the wrong time, you can re-enter immediately if you don't disable the ability to get right back into the trade. And Mark, I see what you're saying. We're not going to get rid of the ATM feature because I do believe that people use it. I don't, but I know people use it. If something's used, just tell me and I'll make sure we don't remove it. We're very, very responsive to what you want. And again, features you want added, send it to help@10minutetrades.com. We've added many features that you all have wanted because you're traders. I mean, we want to support the most amount of traders as possible with our software because you don't have to be a news trader anymore to use our software. You could use it for almost anything, I think. Create your own ranges, your own zones, your own time-based trades. It's pretty amazing, I think, what you can do with it. So unattended, we talked about mode. You can use an ATM strategy, auto disable. Direction, that's something we don't use much because we control direction with the buttons. But if you know well in advance, you just want to trade long only or short only, you could do it with the direction command. We don't need this command because we can do it with our buttons and it's much, much better. Brian, I'm going to try and take care of you, I promise. I promise. So direction, you could do it if you just want to trade long only one day, but it's also with our buttons, all the trades that have buttons, you can deal with direction a little bit more directly and better, I think. There's always more than one way to do something. Show the vertical line on entry. Okay, we had a big conversation about that this morning. So on a trade, we got a lot of complaints over the years. People complained, oh, I can't stand the lines. Let me show you what I mean. I can't see my candles. So here's what it means. On a trade, when a trade enters, that vertical line shows up. You can get rid of it now. People hate it because you can't see like where the fill was. I mean, it's just, it gets in the way sometimes. I'm used to it, so it doesn't bother me. And that's because, I've been here for so long doing it. But again, that's something that it drove people crazy. Show vertical line. If you uncheck it, you don't have to look at the vertical line. Enter cancel diff gapped. It's an old feature right now. It's not really being used. So, one day we may get into that again, but probably it shouldn't be showing up right now because I don't want to confuse people on it. We used to do something different in the way that we traded, and we're not trading that way now. So right now we're just going to leave it. The other thing is I would not experiment. I wouldn't fool around with the error handling. I probably should have removed it, but just leave it where it is for default. Okay, right now we've done some updating to the way errors are handled, and it's actually working quite well these days. That's the truth. Believe it or not, even in these unbelievably fast markets, we see errors occasionally, but when we get errors now, a lot of the times we're in a trade that's been working in our favor. Years ago, whenever we got an error, it was always a bad trade. And we've updated our error handling, and Ninja has done some internal error handling updating as well. So, but I would recommend leaving it where it is. We have done some internal testing, and this is how it's been working the best. Account warnings enabled, we talked about that. If you're trading live money, it will give you a warning. The magnet trade. Now, the one thing that if you go back to the top, I think I forgot to mention, or maybe I mentioned it, if you choose off, you can just trade the magnet trade as a separate strategy. And again, what is the magnet trade? The magnet trade is a special trade setup that right now is tied to the high or the low, the high or the low of the day. Okay. It's a high of the day, low of the day trade. And like I said, we're going to have a little webinar on it, and I'll explain it, and you'll be able to use it. It's a good feature. So magnet trade, and it'll work. If you just want to trade magnet trades, you could just turn the trade type to off. And let's see. So now, and the inputs in the magnet trade, I will go over them. Okay, they are distance away from what you're using as a magnet. So a high of the day or low of the day is a magnet. That's what we're calling magnets. So if you notice on my charts, and when you set up your charts like mine, you'll have a high of the day and you'll have a red low of the day. Those are magnets, okay? That's what the magnet trade's based on, and those highs and lows come from the indicator that's free called current day OHL. That indicator, when it's installed, lets you plot the current open, the current high, the current low, and it's based on, in data series, those levels are based on your trading hours, okay? Mine are based on the 6 p.m. the night before. That's what my levels are based on. And that's when I use instrument settings. That's what it gives me. That's that's a little brief intro to the magnet trade. Then we have a few more things to go here. Plots, self-description, right? What's the high of the day color? What's the low of the day color? Data series, the input series, just like the trap trade, that's automatic, but you could always check it in a trade, make sure it's correct. The account, we talked about that, it's the same input. If you're trading live, you're on your live account. If you're sim, you're on your sim account. If you're on playback, you got to make sure you're on your playback account. Okay. Now, most of these don't even get touched for a trade. So you'll get really used to the things you have to touch. When you load the software, we tried to make it so that defaults never get touched unless you have to change something. So, you know, for a breakout trade, there's not a whole heck of a lot of things to change. So yes, there are many inputs in the software, but if you want to put on a breakout trade, all you need is the activation time, a bracket, positions, targets, and a stop, right? You don't need anything else. Positions, a target, and a stop, a time, and then just make sure that your account is on and you enable it. So you don't have 50 inputs you have to change for a breakout trade. It's nowhere near as complicated as you think. Once you realize many of these inputs are defaults, it's even simpler than you could imagine. Calculating on each tick, just like the trap trade, default label. I like to label my trades. I couldn't move that up, so it was up at the top of the inputs because it's part of Ninja Trader, can't be moved. And then default on look back, maximum bars required to trade, default, start behavior, default, enabled, we're going to ignore, right? We're going to do our enabling up here in the control panel. Historical fill processing, those are all defaults. Standard, untouched, 0, nothing gets changed. And then everything else is default. So those are all the inputs. And then the difference is, depending on your trade type, Sometimes you'll have different inputs that you'll change. But in reality, there's not a whole lot of inputs that you have to do for each trade. It's not like there's 10 minutes of inputs. Maybe there's a minute or 2 minutes, so you go back and check everything and you check it with the DMM, okay? Now let me go through a whole bunch of questions, etc. And now's the time to ask questions, please, because that's what we're doing today. And then we're going to start. A lot of you have been early birds, and we've had some significant training already, and we're going to really start it from scratch. A lot of it will start from scratch again. So let me answer any questions that we have. Where there will not be template changes daily. Nope. The only time a template will change is if the situation we're trading changes. Nope, you didn't complicate my life, Mark. Your favorite feature, we're not going to get rid of the APM feature. Is it possible to include? No, it's not, Lawrence. They're not going to all get put in the DDM. It's just not going to happen because you got to come into the trade. Ultimately, so many of them change in these current markets that it's first of all, it's not practical. They don't fit. It would be a 5-page report. It would be too long. The whole idea of the DMM is to make it short, sweet, and really to the point, not make it so confusing, you know, and there's not that many inputs that you have to. Okay, testing 1, 2. Can you hear me okay? My headset dived. My headset died. Hang on 1 second. So it made me, because of that, I had to save my video. So bear with me. I apologize. Thank goodness we record it twice, because that would have ruined the video just there. I don't know why that headset died. That's never happened before. Okay. Give me 1 second to just catch back up to the questions. Does the high low of day follow only the NT built-in current day? Yes, Francis, it does. We're definitely looking into will other similar indicators work? It's a really good question, Francis. I don't believe so at the moment, but one of the big updates we're going to do to the magnet is add optional magnets. So that'll probably be the next upgrade, and it's not going to be far from now. That's going to be something that we do rather quickly, I believe. What days and times will the 4 webinars be next week? So Joe, what we're probably going to do is just integrate them into the trade rooms Monday through Thursday. That's what we're leaning towards doing, and it'll all be recorded. So anything you can't attend will be recorded. And can we really be honest about this training? You all know me, you've known me, most of you know me really well. It's nonstop training. These 4 days, it's because, I mean, let's be brutally honest. It's part of our sale. We promised we would do 4 days of training, and we're going to live up to what we promised, but it's really 6 months of training. You know, some trade rooms we do a little bit less. some trade rooms, but ultimately we never stop doing stuff and figuring things out. And that's why I like to test in the rooms. So, I mean, that's something you have to get used to. I mean, some people, we've actually lost some members because they said, you know what, you guys stink. You don't trade, all you do is test. And you know what, we traded and made money today. I screwed up a few trades today, fine. And we tested today. And that's how we do it. That is how we do it. Ultimately, Andrew, if we don't post them on the member site, they'll be on our YouTube channel available for watching, okay? And I highly recommend that everybody should sign up for our YouTube channel, especially because we're going to start making a big push to making more and more of our videos public. There's hundreds of videos on there, and we want to make more and more of them public. But it's just, there's a lot of good data up there. So any questions, folks? I've covered everything that I planned to cover today. I wanted to go through all the inputs, all the new things you could expect. And really, it doesn't even cover everything new. There's still, the training is going to be good because you'll get, a lot of you have seen how to use this already because you've been early birds, but a lot of you, a lot of you haven't. So now you'll start coming into the room and you'll see how to use these features in real trades. So any questions? I want to thank everybody for staying. I don't think anybody left. So I don't see any questions. I'll give you all another 30 seconds. If you need help, the easiest way to get help, if you can't come into the trade room, is just send an email to help@10minute trades. I think I want to give everyone a heads up. I found a couple of weird things that are going on in the software that will not cause anything to do with money problems or anything like that, but I've already got the programmer working on it. We'll probably need to download again Monday. Just be aware, you want to download again as soon as I give the word, because there is something I found today that, and I know why it happened. It's something I never would have tested. And I spent last evening with the programmer in a meeting, which we rarely do because we just don't have to. And he's just been really great about, we've had those no fills, which has really bugged me. We've had 3 no fills in 3 weeks. If you notice what happened in those trades, I've never seen markets move that fast in my life. And that alone can cause a no fill. But it bugged him as much as it bugged me, and we're trying to see if we can make some tweaks to the software, things that we didn't plan on doing to help with that. So it's just something that's why this other thing came up. I think he accidentally created that other issue that I saw today. So just be prepared. It's worth it to do another download. It'll probably be Monday. Any other questions? I mean, it takes, what, 1 minute to download the software and load it. It's really easy, so it doesn't matter. Any other questions? So I don't see any other questions. So our next event, I haven't even done the schedule yet for next week. I'm assuming that we'll be in the room minimally Monday at 8. That's what I would figure. I don't think there's any early bird sessions Monday. So expect that I'll see everybody at 8 on Monday. Okay, folks, so have a great weekend. I just wanted, like I said, go through the inputs on the software. It's a good start. Tell everybody, if you need a broker, what to do, and I'll see everybody in the trade room. Okay, folks? So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or problems. See you all later. Thanks.